The courthouse steps of Amarillo, Texas, were blazing under the unforgiving summer sun when Marcus Thompson made the most controversial decision of his life. With his 5-year-old daughter Emma clinging to his weathered hand, he approached the auction block where desperate souls were being sold to the highest bidder. But what happened next would shatter everything the tight-knit community thought they knew about the grieving widower. As the auctioneer's hammer fell and the crowd gasped in shock, Marcus had no idea that the woman he was about to purchase would not only save his daughter's life, but reveal a truth so extraordinary that it would transform their entire world. What did this mysterious woman do that left the whole town speechless? And why would her actions change everything Marcus believed about love, loss, and the true meaning of family? 6 months earlier, the Thompson Ranch stretched across 3,000 acres of prime Texas grassland, its red dirt roads winding between mesquite trees and cattle pastures that had been in Marcus's family for 4 generations. The 2-story farmhouse, with its wraparound porch and white picket fence, had once been filled with laughter and the gentle hum of domestic happiness. But now, as autumn leaves scattered across the empty yard, the silence was deafening. Marcus Thompson, at 32, carried the weight of profound loss in his broad shoulders. His wife Sarah had died giving birth to their 2nd child, and with her, the baby that would have been their son. The tragedy had left him not only heartbroken, but completely unprepared for single parenthood. Emma, now 5 years old with her mother's golden curls and bright blue eyes, had become both his greatest joy and his most overwhelming responsibility. The little girl had stopped speaking entirely after her mother's death. Child psychologists from Dallas had made the long drive to examine her, but their expensive consultations yielded nothing but technical terms and expensive bills. Emma would sit for hours on the porch swing, staring at the horizon where her mother used to watch the sunset, her small hands clutching a worn teddy bear that still smelled faintly of Sarah's perfume. Marcus's own grief manifested in different ways. He threw himself into ranch work with desperate intensity, rising before dawn to tend cattle, mend fences, and manage the endless tasks that kept the operation running. But when evening came and he had to face the domestic responsibilities of cooking, cleaning, and caring for Emma, he felt completely lost. His attempts at braiding her hair resulted in tangles, his cooking rarely progressed beyond beans and cornbread, and bath time had become a nightly battle of wills. The neighboring ranchers' wives had offered help initially, bringing casseroles and volunteering to watch Emma. But as months passed, and Marcus's grief showed no signs of lifting, their visits became less frequent. Mrs. Patterson from the adjacent property still checked in weekly, but her own family demanded most of her attention. The harsh reality was that Marcus needed full-time help, someone who could provide Emma with the maternal care she desperately needed, while allowing him to maintain the ranch that supported them both. It was Pastor Williams who first mentioned the possibility of purchasing an indentured servant. The practice, while controversial, was still legal in certain circumstances, particularly for individuals who had fallen deeply into debt and had no other means of repayment. The pastor had heard of a woman in Amarillo whose circumstances might make her available for such an arrangement. She was educated, he said, with experience caring for children, and her situation was dire enough that she might welcome the opportunity for steady employment and shelter. Marcus wrestled with the decision for weeks. The idea of owning another human being, even temporarily, went against everything Sarah had taught him about human dignity and equality. But as he watched Emma grow thinner and more withdrawn each day, as he saw her favorite dresses becoming too small because he didn't know how to shop for children's clothes, as he realized that his own exhaustion was making him short-tempered and ineffective as a father, he began to consider options he never thought he would entertain. The final catalyst came on a particularly difficult evening when Emma fell from the porch steps and scraped her knee badly. As Marcus tried to clean the wound, she screamed and fought him with surprising strength, clearly wanting her mother's gentle touch instead of his clumsy attempts at first aid. That night, after finally getting her to sleep, Marcus sat alone in the kitchen and made his decision. He would go to Amarillo and see if this arrangement could provide Emma with the care she needed, while allowing him to rebuild some semblance of stability in their lives. If you're already feeling the weight of Marcus's impossible situation and hoping that somehow Emma will find the motherly care she desperately needs, hit the like button to show your support and keep this story unfolding. The journey to Amarillo took Marcus through familiar territory, but this time, the rolling hills and endless sky felt different. He was crossing a line he never thought he would cross, entering a world of moral complexity that his simple ranch life had never required him to navigate. Emma sat beside him in the truck, still silent, her small fingers tracing patterns on the dusty window as they drove past cotton fields and oil derricks. The auction house was located in the older part of town, a brick building that had probably served many purposes over the decades. As Marcus approached the entrance, he noticed other men similar to himself, ranchers and farmers whose weathered faces and work-worn hands told stories of hard living and harder choices. There were also well-dressed businessmen from Dallas and Houston, their polished shoes and clean fingernails marking them as outsiders to this rural world. Inside, the atmosphere was charged with a mixture of desperation and opportunity. The auctioneer, a thin man with a handlebar mustache, called out numbers and descriptions with the same casual tone he might use to sell livestock. But these weren't cattle being paraded across the platform. These were human beings whose circumstances had reduced them to this degrading spectacle. Marcus had expected to see broken, defeated individuals, but what he witnessed surprised him. Many of the people being auctioned carried themselves with dignity despite their circumstances. They were teachers who couldn't find work, shopkeepers whose businesses had failed, skilled workers whose industries had moved elsewhere. Their stories, briefly recounted by the auctioneer, revealed a complex web of economic hardship and social upheaval that Marcus had been largely insulated from on his ranch. When the woman who would change everything stepped onto the platform, Marcus felt something shift in the air around him. Her name was Isabella Martinez, and despite the circumstances, she held her head high with unmistakable grace. She was perhaps 28 years old, with dark hair pulled back severely and intelligent brown eyes that seemed to take in everything around her. Her dress was simple but clean, and there was something about her posture that suggested she had not always lived in poverty. The auctioneer's description was brief but intriguing. Isabella had been a teacher in San Antonio before the school had closed due to budget cuts. She had taken care of her elderly mother until the woman's death, accumulating significant medical debts in the process. With no family left and no prospects for employment that would allow her to repay what she owed, she had voluntarily entered into this arrangement. She was educated, spoke both English and Spanish fluently, and had experience caring for children and managing households. As the bidding began, Marcus found himself studying Isabella's face. Unlike some of the others who had been auctioned, she didn't look down at the floor or seem ashamed of her circumstances. Instead, she appeared to be evaluating the potential buyers with the same intensity they were evaluating her. When her eyes met his, Marcus felt an unexpected jolt of recognition, as if she could see straight through to his deepest concerns and fears. The bidding was competitive. A wealthy cotton farmer from Lubbock seemed determined to win, raising his paddle repeatedly. A businessman from Houston joined the fray, apparently needing domestic help for his mansion. But as the price climbed higher, Marcus found himself raising his own paddle, driven by an instinct he couldn't fully explain. There was something about Isabella that convinced him she was exactly what Emma needed, even though he couldn't articulate why. When the hammer finally fell and Marcus was declared the winning bidder, Isabella's expression didn't change. She simply nodded slightly, as if confirming that she had made her own assessment and found the outcome acceptable. As the paperwork was completed and money changed hands, Marcus felt the weight of what he had done settling on his shoulders like a heavy coat. The ride back to the ranch was awkward at first. Isabella sat in the passenger seat while Emma remained in the back, her small face peering curiously at this new presence in their lives. Marcus attempted several times to start a conversation, but Isabella's responses were polite and minimal. She seemed to be taking in the landscape, noting landmarks and distances with the attention of someone who was planning for a long stay. It wasn't until they were nearly home that Emma broke her months of silence. In a small, clear voice, she asked, "Are you going to take care of me?" Isabella turned in her seat to face the little girl, and her entire demeanor transformed. The formal mask she had worn since leaving Amarillo dissolved, replaced by genuine warmth and concern. "Yes, sweetheart," Isabella replied, her voice gentle but firm. "That's exactly what I'm going to do." It was the first time Emma had spoken since her mother's death, and Marcus had to pull over to compose himself, overwhelmed by relief and hope. That first evening at the ranch established patterns that would define their new life together. Isabella surveyed the house with the practiced eye of someone who understood domestic management on a grand scale. She noted the dust that had accumulated in corners Marcus never thought to clean, the nutritional inadequacy of the simple meals he had been preparing, and most importantly, the signs of a little girl who had been struggling without proper care. But Isabella didn't criticize or immediately take charge. Instead, she asked Marcus to show her around, to explain Emma's routines and preferences, to share what he knew about his daughter's needs. She listened carefully to everything he said, asking thoughtful questions that revealed her deep understanding of child development and family dynamics. By bedtime, Emma was allowing Isabella to help her into her nightgown and read her a story, something that hadn't happened since Sarah's death. Over the following weeks, the transformation of the Thompson household was remarkable. Isabella brought organization to chaos, implementing systems for cleaning, cooking, and childcare that made everything run more smoothly. She prepared nutritious meals that Emma actually enjoyed eating, introduced educational activities that stimulated the little girl's mind, and somehow managed to keep the house spotlessly clean while still having energy left for evening conversations with Marcus about the day's events. But it was Isabella's relationship with Emma that truly amazed Marcus. The woman seemed to understand instinctively what the little girl needed. Not just physical care, but emotional healing. She introduced gentle routines that helped Emma process her grief, including a nightly ritual where they would look at stars and talk about how Emma's mother was watching over her from heaven. She taught Emma songs in both English and Spanish, filling the house with music for the first time since Sarah's death. More surprisingly, Isabella proved to be invaluable in helping Marcus manage the ranch. She had grown up on a farm in South Texas and understood livestock, crops, and the rhythms of agricultural life. She could spot a sick calf from across a field, knew which pastures would provide the best grazing at different times of year, and had ideas for improving efficiency that Marcus had never considered. Her suggestions consistently proved to be both practical and profitable. As autumn turned to winter, Marcus began to notice details about Isabella that intrigued him. Her hands, while calloused from farm work, were long and elegant, suggesting she hadn't always done manual labor. She occasionally used vocabulary that seemed more sophisticated than what he would expect from someone who had lived in poverty. Most mysteriously, she sometimes received letters that she read privately and never discussed, always folding them carefully and putting them away in a small wooden box she kept in her room. One evening, while reviewing ranch finances, Marcus mentioned his concerns about expanding the cattle operation. Isabella listened thoughtfully, then began asking detailed questions about market prices, feed costs, and seasonal variations in demand. Her questions were so sophisticated that Marcus realized she understood business and finance at a level that surprised him. When he commented on this, Isabella simply smiled and said she had always been interested in learning about different subjects. The first major test of their arrangement came during a fierce winter storm that isolated the ranch for nearly a week. The electricity went out, pipes froze, and several cattle got trapped in a gully filled with snow. Isabella proved to be not just helpful, but essential during the crisis. She knew how to generate heat using alternative methods, how to prevent pipes from bursting, and how to care for livestock in extreme weather conditions. She worked alongside Marcus for 18 hours straight, never complaining about the cold or the difficulty of the tasks. During those long nights by the fireplace, waiting for the storm to pass, Marcus found himself talking to Isabella about things he had never discussed with anyone. He told her about his dreams for expanding the ranch, about his fears that he wasn't being a good enough father to Emma, about the loneliness that had consumed him since Sarah's death. Isabella listened without judgment, occasionally offering insights that helped him see his situation from new perspectives. In return, Isabella began to share small pieces of her own story. She spoke about her childhood on her family's farm, about her mother's long illness, about the frustration of watching everything she had worked for slip away due to circumstances beyond her control. But Marcus sensed there were parts of her story she wasn't telling, layers of complexity that she kept carefully hidden beneath her calm exterior. One night, Emma had a nightmare about her mother and woke up screaming. Both Marcus and Isabella rushed to her room, but it was Isabella who knew exactly what to do. She held Emma gently, speaking in soft Spanish words that seemed to calm the little girl immediately. As she rocked Emma back to sleep, Isabella began singing a lullaby in Spanish, her voice so beautiful that Marcus found himself wondering about her background again. The next morning, Marcus asked Isabella where she had learned to sing like that. She hesitated for a moment before explaining that her mother had been a music teacher before getting married and moving to the farm. Isabella had inherited her mother's voice and had once considered pursuing music professionally. The wistfulness in her voice when she spoke about this lost dream gave Marcus a glimpse of the sacrifices she had made and the dreams she had set aside. As winter gave way to spring, Marcus realized that his feelings for Isabella were evolving beyond gratitude and respect. He found himself looking forward to their evening conversations, noticing the way her eyes lit up when she talked about Emma's progress, appreciating the quiet competence with which she managed every aspect of their domestic life. But he also felt conflicted about these growing feelings, knowing that their relationship was built on a financial arrangement that gave her little choice in the matter. The complexity of the situation became even more apparent when neighbors began visiting more frequently, curious about the new addition to the Thompson household. Most were kind and welcoming to Isabella, but Marcus could sense the underlying questions and assumptions. Some wondered if she was more than just a servant. Others speculated about her background and her reasons for accepting such an arrangement. Isabella handled these social challenges with grace, but Marcus could see that the scrutiny was sometimes uncomfortable for her. Spring brought new challenges and new revelations. When it came time to plant crops, Isabella suggested trying a rotation system that would improve soil fertility and increase yields. Her knowledge was so detailed and practical that Marcus wondered where she had learned such advanced agricultural techniques. When he asked, she explained that she had spent summers working on various farms while attending college, always eager to learn new methods and approaches. This casual mention of college education surprised Marcus. Isabella had never mentioned attending university before, and her reference to it was so offhand that he almost missed it. When he asked for more details, Isabella seemed to realize she had revealed more than she intended. She quickly changed the subject, but Marcus filed this information away with all the other small mysteries that surrounded the woman who had become so essential to his family's happiness. The most significant revelation came during a trip to town for supplies in late spring. While Marcus was loading feed in the truck, Isabella disappeared briefly, saying she needed to mail a letter. When she returned, Marcus noticed she was carrying herself differently, with a confidence and authority that hadn't been there before. She seemed almost regal as she walked through the busy street, nodding politely to people who stared at her with curiosity and something that looked almost like recognition. That evening, Marcus was reviewing ranch accounts when he realized that their financial situation had improved dramatically over the winter. Not only had Isabella's suggestions about livestock management and crop rotation proven profitable, but she had also identified several areas where costs could be reduced without sacrificing quality. Her contributions had been so valuable that the ranch was showing its best profit margins in years. As he sat contemplating these improvements, Marcus began to wonder if Isabella's arrival at the auction house had been as random as it seemed. Her knowledge, her skills, her ability to transform their lives so completely, it all seemed too perfect to be coincidental. But when he tried to imagine alternative explanations, he found himself in territory that seemed almost impossible to believe. The turning point came on a warm May morning when Emma ran into the house, tears streaming down her face, clutching a letter that had been delivered by a well-dressed stranger in an expensive automobile. The man had insisted on delivering it personally to Isabella, refusing to leave it with Marcus or explain its contents. Emma had watched from the porch as Isabella read the letter, her face growing pale before she carefully folded it and walked toward the barn with determined steps. Marcus found Isabella in the feed room, sitting on a hay bale with her head in her hands. The letter lay open beside her, And even from a distance, Marcus could see the official letterhead and formal language that suggested legal or business correspondence. When Isabella looked up, her eyes were filled with a mixture of fear and resignation that Marcus had never seen before. "I have to tell you the truth," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper, "about who I really am and why I was really at that auction." She stood up slowly, smoothing her dress with shaking hands. "But first, I need you to promise me something. No matter what you learn about me, please don't let it change how you feel about Emma. She needs stability, and she's finally found it here with you." Marcus felt his heart begin to race. All the small mysteries, the sophisticated knowledge, the letters, the moments when Isabella seemed more like aristocracy than a servant, suddenly they all pointed toward a revelation that would change everything he thought he knew about the woman who had become so central to his life. "Isabella," he said gently, moving closer to her, "whatever it is, we'll face it together. You've become family to us. Nothing can change that." But even as he spoke the words, Marcus felt a deep unease settling in his chest. The letter in Isabella's hands looked official and urgent, the kind of communication that brought news of legal troubles or family emergencies. Isabella took a deep breath and began to speak, her words tumbling out in a rush as if she was afraid she would lose her courage if she paused. "My real name is Isabella Maria Vasquez de Montemayor. I'm not just a poor farm girl who fell on hard times. I'm the daughter of Don Eduardo Vasquez, who owns the largest cattle operation in South Texas. My family has been in ranching for 6 generations, and we control over 50,000 acres of prime grazing land." Marcus felt the world tilt around him. Everything he thought he knew about Isabella was crumbling, replaced by a reality so unexpected that he struggled to process it. "But the auction," he stammered, "the debts, the story about being a teacher, all lies," Isabella continued, her voice gaining strength as she committed to the truth. "Well, not complete lies. I was a teacher, but by choice, not necessity. I taught at a private school in San Antonio as part of a program to understand education from the ground up, before implementing reforms on our own properties. The medical debts were real, but they were for workers on our ranch, not my mother. My mother is very much alive and probably worried sick about me right now." She gestured toward the letter with a trembling hand. "That's from my father's attorney. They finally tracked me down. My disappearance has caused a scandal that's affecting business relationships across 3 states. I have to go back and face the consequences of what I've done." Marcus stared at her, trying to reconcile the woman he had come to love with this revelation of wealth and privilege that seemed to come from another world entirely. "But why?" he asked. "Why would someone with everything choose to live like this? Why would you put yourself through an auction, through months of hard labor, through being owned by a stranger?" Isabella's eyes filled with tears, but her voice remained steady. "Because I needed to know what real life was like. I was raised in luxury, surrounded by servants and protected from every hardship. I was supposed to marry a man chosen by my father, someone who would merge our ranch with his to create an even larger empire. But I realized I had never made a single real decision in my life, never faced actual challenges, never discovered who I really was when everything was stripped away." She stood up and walked to the barn door, gazing out at the fields where she had worked so hard alongside Marcus. "The auction was my idea. I researched the legal requirements, created the false identity, and arranged to be sold to someone who needed genuine help. I wanted to prove to myself that I could survive on my own merits, that I could be valuable for what I could do, not just for who my father was." Marcus felt a crushing weight settling on his chest. Not only was the woman he loved not who he thought she was, but her entire presence in his life had been based on a deception. Worse, she was telling him all this because she was about to leave. "So now you go back to your real life," he said, unable to keep the bitterness from his voice. "You've had your adventure playing at being poor, and now you return to your castle in the sky." "It's not like that," Isabella said desperately, turning back to face him. "What I found here, what we built together, it's more real than anything I ever had before. I never expected to fall in love with you and Emma. I never expected to find a home that felt more genuine than the mansion I grew up in." The words hung in the air between them, charged with emotion and possibility. Marcus realized that despite the deception, despite the impossible complications her revelation had created, his feelings for Isabella hadn't changed. If anything, learning about the choice she had made, giving up luxury and comfort to discover her true self, made him admire her even more. But the practical implications were staggering. Isabella wasn't just wealthy, she was from a different social stratum entirely. Her family controlled an empire that made his modest ranch look like a small vegetable garden. The idea that she could simply choose to stay and continue their life together seemed naive and impossible. A dangerous decision has been made. What would you do if you were in Marcus's boots? Fight for love against impossible odds, or accept that some social distances are too great to bridge? Let me know your strategy in the comments below. The sound of approaching vehicles broke the tension of the moment. Through the barn door, Marcus could see a convoy of black automobiles kicking up dust as they approached the ranch house. These weren't local farm trucks or neighbors' pickups. These were the kind of luxury vehicles that belonged to people with serious money and serious power. "They found me," Isabella whispered, her face draining of color. "I thought I had more time." She grabbed Marcus's arm with surprising strength. "Please, whatever happens next, remember that everything I feel for you and Emma is real. The love I have for this place, for this life we've built, that's the truest thing I've ever known." The lead vehicle came to a stop in front of the house, and Marcus watched as several men in expensive suits emerged. But it was the final passenger who made Isabella gasp audibly. A distinguished older man with silver hair and a commanding presence stepped out of the largest automobile, his eyes immediately scanning the property with the practiced gaze of someone who evaluated land and assets for a living. "Don Eduardo Vasquez," Isabella breathed. "My father came himself." The mixture of love and fear in her voice told Marcus everything he needed to know about the complexity of their relationship. Emma came running from the house, her face bright with curiosity about the visitors. But when she saw Isabella's distressed expression, the little girl immediately moved to her side, taking her hand in a gesture of protective loyalty that broke Marcus's heart. In just a few months, Isabella had become Emma's anchor, her source of security and love. Now that bond was about to be tested in ways none of them could have anticipated. Don Eduardo approached with the confident stride of a man accustomed to command. He was shorter than Marcus had expected, but his presence filled the space around him. His expensive boots and perfectly tailored clothes marked him as someone from a different world, but his weathered hands and sun-lined face showed that he was no stranger to ranch work. "Isabella Maria," he said, his voice carrying a mixture of relief, anger, and profound disappointment. "Do you have any idea what you've put your family through? What you've done to our business relationships?" The scandal of a Vasquez daughter being sold at auction has reached as far as Mexico City. Isabella lifted her chin with a defiance that reminded Marcus of the first day he saw her on the auction platform. "I did what I needed to do, Papa. I needed to discover who I really was, not just who you wanted me to become." "And what did you discover?" Don Eduardo asked, his eyes taking in the modest farmhouse, the simple work clothes Isabella wore, the little girl clinging to her hand. "That you enjoy poverty, that you prefer hard labor to the comfort your family can provide." "I discovered that I'm capable of more than I ever imagined," Isabella replied firmly. "I learned that real satisfaction comes from building something with your own hands, from earning respect through your actions rather than your name. I learned what it means to be truly needed, not just ornamental." Marcus stepped forward, knowing that his intervention might make everything worse but unable to remain silent. "Sir, with all due respect, your daughter has been invaluable here. She's not just survived, she's thrived. She's helped save this ranch and given my daughter a chance at happiness again." Don Eduardo turned his attention to Marcus for the first time, his dark eyes assessing. "And you are Marcus Thompson, the man who purchased my daughter." The words carried a weight of judgment that made Marcus feel like he was being evaluated for his worthiness. "I am," Marcus replied, meeting the older man's gaze directly. "And I can tell you that Isabella, your daughter, is the most remarkable woman I've ever known. She's intelligent, capable, compassionate, and stronger than any person I've met. You should be proud of what she's accomplished here." A slight smile played at the corners of Don Eduardo's mouth. "I see. And what exactly has she accomplished?" The question seemed like a test, and Marcus realized that his answer might determine not just Isabella's future, but Emma's as well. Marcus gestured toward the ranch around them. "She's taken a failing operation and made it profitable. She's helped me become a better father. She's brought my daughter back from grief and given her hope again. She's proven that she can succeed based on her own merits, which I think was the point of this whole experiment." "Experiment?" Don Eduardo repeated, his eyebrows rising. "Is that what you think this was?" Isabella stepped between them, her voice urgent. "Papa, please. I know you're angry, but don't take it out on Marcus and Emma. They've done nothing wrong. If you want to punish someone, punish me." Don Eduardo was quiet for a long moment, his eyes moving between Isabella, Marcus, and Emma. Finally, he spoke. "Isabella, walk with me. I want to see this ranch that has captured your heart so completely." As they walked toward the pastures, Marcus could hear fragments of their conversation carried on the wind. Don Eduardo was asking detailed questions about the ranch operations, the cattle management, the crop rotation systems Isabella had implemented. To Marcus's surprise, Isabella was answering with the confidence and expertise of someone who had been raised in the business, using technical terms and financial projections that demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of large-scale agriculture. When they returned an hour later, both father and daughter wore expressions that Marcus couldn't quite read. Don Eduardo approached Marcus directly, his manner more respectful than it had been earlier. "Mr. Thompson," he said formally, "my daughter tells me that you've treated her with respect and kindness during her time here. She also tells me that you've fallen in love with her, and she with you." Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks, but he didn't deny it. "She's also convinced me that the improvements she's made to your operation demonstrate genuine business acumen that could be valuable in a larger context." Marcus wasn't sure where this conversation was heading, but he sensed that everything depended on his next words. "Sir, I love your daughter more than I thought I could love anyone again, but I also respect her enough to want what's best for her, even if that means she has to leave us." Don Eduardo nodded approvingly. "That's exactly what I hoped you would say." He turned to Isabella, his expression softening. "Mija, you've proven your point. You've shown that you can succeed on your own merits, that you can make difficult decisions and live with the consequences. You've also shown that you understand love and commitment in ways that your sheltered upbringing never could have taught you." Isabella's eyes filled with hope, but she remained cautious. "What are you saying, Papa?" "I'm saying that you've earned the right to make your own choices about your future. If you choose to stay here, to build a life with Marcus and little Emma, you have my blessing. But," he paused significantly, "I want to make you a proposition that might interest you both. If this twist caught you by surprise, subscribe now and hit that notification bell, because the resolution of this Texas tale is about to get even more unbelievable." Don Eduardo reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder of documents that he handed to Marcus. "Mr. Thompson, how would you feel about expanding your operation by about 47,000 acres? Marcus stared at the papers, unable to process what he was seeing. They appeared to be property deeds and business contracts, all bearing the letterhead of Vasquez Holdings, Inc. "I don't understand," he said slowly. "For the past 6 months," Don Eduardo explained, "I've been quietly purchasing land adjacent to your property. Initially, it was to keep track of Isabella's whereabouts without interfering with her experiment. But as I researched your operation and observed the improvements my daughter was making, I realized there was an opportunity here that could benefit everyone." Isabella looked as shocked as Marcus felt. "Papa, what are you talking about?" Don Eduardo smiled, and for the first time, Marcus could see the family resemblance between father and daughter. "I'm talking about a partnership, Mija. Marcus has proven that he can manage land responsibly and profitably. You've proven that you can be a valuable business partner as well as a loving stepmother to Emma. Together, you could run an expanded operation that would be one of the most successful ranches in Texas." Marcus felt like the ground was shifting beneath his feet. "But sir, I could never afford to buy that much land, even in partnership." "Who said anything about buying?" Don Eduardo interrupted. "I'm talking about a gift. A wedding present, if you will, for my daughter and the man who was wise enough to see her true value. He gestured toward the documents. The land, the initial stock, the infrastructure improvements, all of it comes to you free and clear, with only one condition. Isabella grabbed her father's arm. What condition, Papa? Don Eduardo's expression became serious again. That you promise to visit your old father at least once a month, and that you name your first son Eduardo. His stern facade cracked and he smiled broadly. I'm getting too old to manage such a large operation, and I'd rather see it in the hands of family than sell it to strangers. The implications were staggering. Marcus would go from being a small-scale rancher to managing one of the largest cattle operations in Texas. Emma would grow up with opportunities and advantages he could never have provided on his own. And Isabella. Isabella could have both the life she had chosen and the family legacy she had been born to inherit. But even as Marcus felt overwhelming gratitude and excitement, he noticed that Isabella looked troubled. "There's something else, isn't there?" she asked her father quietly. Don Eduardo nodded reluctantly. "The man you were supposed to marry, Ricardo Mendoza, he's not handling the broken engagement well. His family's business interests are extensive, and they consider your rejection to be a public humiliation. They've made threats suggested that they might take action to force you to honor the original agreement." The joy that had been building in Marcus's chest suddenly turned cold. What kind of threats? "The kind that wealthy, powerful families make when they feel they've been dishonored," Don Eduardo replied grimly. "They have influence with local authorities, connections to people who might be willing to cause trouble for a small ranch operation. They could make life very difficult for you, Marcus, and for Emma." Isabella's face had gone pale. "Papa, you should have told me. I never wanted to put them in danger." "Which is why I'm not just offering you land and cattle," Don Eduardo continued. "I'm also offering you the protection of the Vasquez name and resources. As my son-in-law, Marcus, you would have the backing of one of the most influential families in Texas. The Mendozas would think twice before challenging us directly." Marcus looked at Isabella, seeing the conflict in her eyes. She had fought so hard for the right to make her own choices, only to discover that her freedom might come at the cost of their safety. "Isabella," he said gently, "this has to be your decision. I won't let you feel trapped, not even by circumstances." Isabella was quiet for a long moment, her eyes moving between Marcus, Emma, and her father. Finally, she spoke. "I choose love," she said firmly. "I choose the life we've built here, the family we've become. If that means facing whatever challenges come with it, then we'll face them together." Don Eduardo smiled with obvious relief and pride. "Then let's make this official," he said, pulling out another set of documents. "Marcus, these are the papers that will legally transfer ownership of Isabella's indenture back to her, making her a free woman. And these," he handed over another folder, "are the wedding contracts and property transfers. All we need now is a minister and some witnesses." As if summoned by the mention of marriage, Pastor Williams's truck appeared in the distance, followed by several vehicles carrying neighbors and friends. Marcus stared in amazement as Mrs. Patterson, the Miller family, and other members of their community began arriving at the ranch. "Papa," Isabella said with a mixture of exasperation and affection, "how long have you been planning this?" "Ever since I realized that my stubborn daughter had managed to find exactly what she was looking for," Don Eduardo replied with a grin. "I may be old, but I'm not stupid. When I saw the changes you'd made to this place, when I heard how the whole community talks about the way you've cared for Emma, I knew you had found your true calling. So I took the liberty of arranging a few things in advance." Marcus watched in wonder as Pastor Williams approached with a knowing smile, carrying his ceremonial book and wearing his best suit. Mrs. Patterson was directing the other neighbors in setting up tables and chairs in the yard, as if this impromptu wedding had been planned for weeks. The smell of barbecue began drifting from somewhere behind the house, suggesting that even the catering had been mysteriously arranged. "You planned all of this without knowing if I would say yes?" Isabella asked her father, though her tone was more amused than angry. "I raised you, mija," Don Eduardo replied with quiet confidence. "I knew that once you found something real and true, you would fight for it. And I could see in Marcus's eyes that he would fight for you too. Sometimes a father has to have faith in his daughter's judgment, even when she's making unconventional choices. Emma, who had been watching all these adult conversations with the serious attention of a child trying to understand important things, suddenly spoke up. "Does this mean Isabella gets to stay forever?" she asked, her small voice carrying a weight of hope that made everyone present smile. Isabella knelt down to Emma's level, taking the little girl's hands in hers. "Yes, sweetheart. This means I get to stay forever and be your mama if you want me to be." Emma's response was to throw her arms around Isabella's neck with such force that they both nearly fell over. "I've been wishing for you to be my real mama," Emma whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I ask God every night and he listened." As the impromptu wedding preparations continued around them, Marcus found a quiet moment to speak with Don Eduardo privately. "Sir, I need you to know that I understand the magnitude of what you're offering. This isn't just about land or money. You're trusting me with your daughter's happiness and your family's legacy. I promise you that I'll spend every day trying to be worthy of that trust." Don Eduardo studied Marcus's face for a long moment before nodding approvingly. "Marcus, I've spent the last 6 months having you investigated by the best private detectives money can buy. I know about your service in the war, about the way you cared for your first wife during her illness, about your reputation in this community for honesty and hard work. I know that you're a man of integrity who will cherish my daughter the way she deserves to be cherished." The revelation that he had been under investigation might have angered Marcus under different circumstances, but now it only reinforced his understanding of how seriously Don Eduardo took his daughter's welfare. "And the threats from the Mendoza family?" Marcus asked quietly. "Will be handled," Don Eduardo replied with a steely certainty that suggested he had significant experience dealing with such matters. "The Mendozas are wealthy and influential, but they're not the only powerful family in Texas. They'll find that making enemies of the Vasquez family has consequences they didn't anticipate." As the sun began to set over the Texas hills, casting long shadows across the ranch that would soon expand beyond Marcus's wildest dreams, the wedding ceremony began. It was simple and heartfelt, conducted on the front porch of the house where Isabella had spent months proving herself through hard work and dedication. When Pastor Williams asked if there were any objections to the union, a voice called out from the back of the gathering, "I have something to say." Marcus felt his blood freeze as he recognized the voice belonged to Ricardo Mendoza, Isabella's former fiancé, who had apparently arrived during the ceremony preparations. Ricardo was everything Marcus was not: tall, perfectly groomed, wearing clothes that probably cost more than most people made in a year. He approached the wedding party with the confident stride of someone accustomed to getting his way through wealth and intimidation. "Isabella," Ricardo said, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent gathering, "you're making a mistake that will have consequences for both our families. This little romantic fantasy might seem appealing now, but it won't survive the realities of the business world we come from." Isabella stepped forward, and Marcus was struck by the way she seemed to grow taller and more regal in Ricardo's presence, as if his arrival had awakened the aristocratic bearing she had learned to suppress. "Ricardo, you were invited to accept my decision months ago. What we had was an arrangement between our fathers, not a love story. What I have with Marcus is real." "Real?" Ricardo laughed bitterly. "You think this cowboy can provide for you the way I can? You think this little ranch can compete with the empire our families could build together? You're throwing away everything for a romantic delusion." It was Emma who broke the tension. The little girl walked up to Ricardo with the fearless curiosity of childhood and looked up at him seriously. "Are you the mean man who wants to take Isabella away from us?" she asked in her clear, innocent voice. Ricardo looked down at Emma with surprise, as if he hadn't considered that children might be involved in this adult drama. "Little girl, I'm trying to save Isabella from making a terrible mistake." "She's not making a mistake," Emma replied with the absolute certainty that only children possess. "She makes the best pancakes and she sings to me when I have bad dreams, and she teaches me Spanish words, and she loves my daddy, and he loves her back. That's not a mistake. That's a family." The simple truth in Emma's words seemed to deflate Ricardo's anger. He looked around at the gathered community, at the obvious affection and respect everyone had for Isabella, at the clear happiness radiating from the bride and groom despite his interruption. Don Eduardo stepped forward, his voice carrying quiet authority. "Ricardo, you've had your say. Now I suggest you leave before this becomes unpleasant for everyone involved." But Ricardo had one final card to play. "Very well," he said, his voice turning cold. "But don't say I didn't warn you, Isabella. When this fantasy ends, and it will end, don't expect our family to welcome you back. And Marcus," he turned to face the groom directly, "when you realize you're in over your head with business matters beyond your understanding, remember that you brought this on yourself." With that threat hanging in the air, Ricardo walked back to his expensive automobile and drove away, leaving a cloud of dust and tension in his wake. Pastor Williams cleared his throat diplomatically. "Well," he said with determined cheerfulness, "shall we continue with this wedding? I believe we were at the part where I ask if anyone has any legitimate objections to this union." The ceremony concluded without further interruption, and as Marcus kissed his new wife under the Texas stars, he felt like the luckiest man in the world. But in the back of his mind, Ricardo's threats echoed ominously, a reminder that their new happiness might come at a higher cost than they had anticipated. The wedding celebration continued late into the night, with neighbors sharing stories, children playing in the yard, and the smell of barbecue and fresh-baked pies filling the air. But as the last guests departed and the new family settled into their expanded home, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that their real challenges were just beginning. 3 months later, those challenges began to manifest in ways that tested everything they thought they knew about love, loyalty, and the power of family. The first sign of trouble came when several of their largest cattle buyers suddenly cancelled their contracts, citing vague concerns about reliability and changing market conditions. Then their bank informed them that their loans were being called in early, despite their excellent payment history. But the most serious threat came in an unexpected form. One morning, Marcus found Emma's teacher, Mrs. Henderson, waiting anxiously by her car after school. "Mr. Thompson," she said quietly, "there were some men here today asking questions about Emma. They claimed to be from the State Child Welfare Office, but something didn't feel right about them. They wanted to know about her living situation, about Isabella's background, about whether Emma was being properly supervised." The implication was clear. Someone was trying to use Emma as leverage against them, possibly attempting to build a case that would allow her to be removed from their home. The thought of losing his daughter, especially now when she was finally happy and thriving, made Marcus feel sick with rage and fear. That night, as Isabella tucked Emma into bed, the little girl asked quietly, "Mama Isabella, are the bad men going to take me away from you and Daddy?" The question revealed that Emma had picked up on the adult tensions swirling around her, despite their efforts to shield her from their worries. "No, sweetheart," Isabella said firmly, though Marcus could see the fear in her eyes. "Your daddy and I will never let anyone take you away from us. We're a family now, and families protect each other." But as they lay in bed that night, holding each other close, both Marcus and Isabella knew that their enemies were playing for keeps. The question was whether their love and the support of their community would be enough to protect everything they had built together, or whether the forces arrayed against them would prove too powerful to overcome. The answer would come sooner than they expected, and in a form that would test not just their courage, but their faith in the very foundations of justice and truth. The resolution came 6 months later, but not in the way anyone expected. It began with an early morning phone call that woke Marcus and Isabella from a deep sleep. Don Eduardo's voice on the line was grim, but oddly satisfied. "Turn on the radio," he said without preamble. "Channel 1040. There's something you need to hear." The news report that crackled through their old radio speaker changed everything. Ricardo Mendoza and 2 of his business associates had been arrested on federal charges of fraud, extortion, and conspiracy. The investigation, which had been quietly ongoing for over a year, had uncovered a network of illegal activities that extended far beyond their harassment of the Thompson family. "It seems," Don Eduardo explained when he arrived at the ranch later that morning, "that the Mendoza family's business practices attracted the attention of federal investigators long before Isabella cancelled her engagement. Their attempts to pressure you and Isabella were just the latest in a pattern of using intimidation and corruption to get their way. Isabella sat at the kitchen table, Emma on her lap, as she processed this news. So all of this, the cancelled contracts, the threats against Emma, the investigation by child services, it was all Ricardo trying to force me to come back to him. Partly, Don Eduardo nodded, but it was also about pride and control. The Mendoza family couldn't accept that a woman would choose love over their version of power and security. They saw your happiness as a personal insult that needed to be corrected. Marcus felt a weight lifting from his shoulders that he hadn't fully realized he'd been carrying. So it's over? Emma is safe, the ranch is secure, and we can just live our lives? It's over, Don Eduardo confirmed with a smile. In fact, I have some additional good news. With the Mendoza family's legal troubles, several of their legitimate business interests are being sold off. I've arranged to purchase their cattle operations, which means your expanded ranch will now be one of the 3 largest in Texas. The transformation of their lives over the following year was remarkable. The ranch prospered beyond their wildest dreams, but more importantly, their family flourished. Emma grew into a confident bilingual child who could ride horses, help with cattle, and charm visitors with her stories about life on the ranch. She never forgot her birth mother, but Isabella's love had healed the wounds of early loss and given her a foundation of security that would serve her throughout her life. Isabella proved to be not just a loving stepmother and wife, but a brilliant business partner. Her combination of formal education, practical experience, and intuitive understanding of both people and animals made her invaluable in all aspects of ranch management. More than that, she brought joy and laughter back to a house that had been silent with grief for too long. Marcus found himself becoming not just a more successful rancher, but a better man. Isabella's love had awakened parts of himself that he had thought died with Sarah. He learned that the heart's capacity for love isn't limited, that loving Isabella didn't diminish his memories of his first wife, but rather honored them by showing that the love they had shared had taught him how to love again. The true test of their relationship came not during the crisis with the Mendoza family, but in the quiet daily choices that define a marriage. When Isabella had bad days, missing her old life or struggling with the isolation of ranch living, Marcus learned to be patient and supportive. When Marcus faced setbacks or self-doubt about his worthiness of Isabella's sacrifice, she reminded him of his strength and the many ways he had enriched her life. They established traditions that honored both their backgrounds. Sunday dinners that featured both Texas barbecue and traditional Mexican cuisine, Christmas celebrations that included both English carols and Spanish villancicos, business meetings conducted in English but family conversations that flowed naturally between languages. 2 years after their wedding, Isabella gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl. Eduardo Marcus Thompson and Sarah Isabella Thompson entered the world healthy and strong, immediately adored by their big sister Emma and welcomed by a community that had watched their parents' love story unfold. Don Eduardo, true to his word, was a devoted grandfather who spoiled all 3 children equally and took pride in teaching them about their heritage and responsibilities. The ranch became known throughout Texas, not just for its size and profitability, but for the way it was run. Marcus and Isabella implemented progressive policies for their workers, including healthcare, education opportunities for children, and profit-sharing arrangements that made their employees partners in the ranch's success. Their approach became a model that other operations began to emulate, but perhaps the most important change was harder to quantify. The Thompson Ranch became a place where love had triumphed over adversity, where 2 people from different worlds had found common ground in their shared values and mutual respect. Visitors often commented on the atmosphere of contentment that pervaded the property, the sense that this was a place where people were genuinely happy and fulfilled. Isabella never regretted her choice to leave her privileged upbringing behind. The woman who had once felt trapped by wealth and expectation had found freedom in choosing love over convenience, in building something meaningful with her own hands rather than inheriting success. She often told friends that being sold at auction was the best thing that ever happened to her, because it led her to discover who she really was and what she was truly capable of achieving. Marcus learned that love isn't about possession or control, but about creating space for another person to become their best self. His relationship with Isabella was built on equality and mutual respect, even though it had begun with the legal fiction of ownership. He discovered that real strength isn't about dominance, but about vulnerability, the courage to open your heart completely to another person. Emma grew up understanding that families can be formed in unexpected ways, that love doesn't always follow conventional paths, and that the bonds created by choice and commitment can be just as strong as those created by blood. She learned from Isabella that women can be both gentle and strong, that education and hard work are equally important, and that standing up for your beliefs sometimes requires courage that seems impossible until you find it within yourself. The moral of their story resonated far beyond the boundaries of their ranch. In a world that often seemed divided by class, race, and circumstance, Marcus and Isabella had proven that love could bridge any gap if both people were willing to meet each other with honesty and respect. They had shown that real wealth isn't measured in dollars or acres, but in the quality of relationships and the depth of commitment people make to each other. Their story also demonstrated that sometimes the most profound transformations come from the most unexpected circumstances. Isabella's decision to disguise herself and submit to auction had seemed desperate and extreme, but it had led her to exactly the life she needed. Marcus's choice to purchase an indentured servant had seemed practical and impersonal, but it had brought him the love of his life. Perhaps most importantly, they had learned that true love isn't about finding someone perfect, but about choosing to see the perfection in someone you've decided to love completely. Isabella had fallen in love with Marcus not because he was wealthy or sophisticated, but because he was kind, honest, and devoted to his daughter. Marcus had fallen in love with Isabella not because of her beauty or her hidden wealth, but because of her strength, her intelligence, and her capacity for love. Years later, when Emma was grown and had children of her own, she would tell their story to her own family. She would talk about the day a mysterious woman came to live with them and transformed their grief into joy, their small ranch into an empire, and their broken family into something whole and beautiful. She would emphasize that love requires courage, the courage to trust, to be vulnerable, to make choices that might seem impossible, but feel completely right. The Thompson Ranch remained in the family for generations, but its true legacy wasn't measured in land or cattle. Its legacy was the proof that love could conquer any obstacle, that families could be formed by choice as well as birth, and that sometimes the greatest blessings come disguised as the most difficult challenges. In the end, the story of Marcus and Isabella became more than just a love story. It became a testament to the transformative power of hope, faith, and the belief that every person deserves to be loved for exactly who they are. And so ends the remarkable tale of Marcus Thompson, the grieving widower who thought he was simply purchasing help for his ranch, and Isabella Vasquez, the wealthy woman who risked everything to discover her true self. Their story reminds us that love often arrives in the most unexpected packages, that true wealth is measured in relationships rather than possessions, and that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is open our hearts to possibilities we never imagined. Thank you for staying with me through this long journey across the Texas plains, through the trials and triumphs of a family that refused to give up on each other. If this story touched your heart, if you found yourself rooting for Marcus and Isabella and little Emma, please take a moment to hit that like button and let me know in the comments which moment in their story affected you the most. Did you suspect Isabella's true identity from the beginning, or were you as surprised as Marcus when her secret was revealed? I love hearing from you about these Texas ranch tales, and your comments help me understand what kinds of stories resonate most deeply with your hearts. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because there are more incredible stories of love, loss, and redemption waiting to be told. Stories of ordinary people who find extraordinary courage, of families formed by choice rather than chance, and of the enduring power of hope in the face of seemingly impossible odds. Until next time, remember that every person you meet is fighting battles you know nothing about, and that a little kindness and understanding can change someone's entire world. Sometimes we all need someone to see past our circumstances to the person we really are inside. just like Marcus saw past Isabella's disguise to her true heart. May you be blessed with the courage to love deeply, the wisdom to choose compassion over judgment, and the faith to believe that your own greatest adventures are still waiting to unfold. Keep those comments coming, keep spreading love and positivity, and I'll see you in the next tale from the heart of Texas, where the horizon is wide, the stars shine bright, and anything is possible for those brave enough to chase their dreams.